within 1 year, we as junior faculty have 2 most senior members of the psychology faculty suddenly retire or move away from Fresno Pacific. The third was with us 1 more year, and then she left. So for 2 years, it was literally Elizabeth and I. We are not married, even though we no, because we've been here for 18 years and we can't be back in time, and some people might be thinking, oh, no, we're not married. We do follow each other. The classes that I teach mainly are on the clinical side. So abnormal psychology, psychological assessment. I've developed a really strong interest in social psychology since I arrived here at Fresno Pacific. Personality, history of system. We used to teach biopsychology. Dr. Vince stole that from me. And I used to teach cognitive psychology. He also stole that from me. And yeah, just thrilled to be continuing to teach here. In the spring, I also teach integration symposium. I'll touch on that a bit later. Area of expertise is clinical psychology. So by training, I'm a clinical psychologist and have maintained a very small, limited, but pretty consistent practice for the last 20 some odd years, 22 years of that.
All right. So I have not been here 18 years. This is my second year. So I'm glad to see some of my students out there. My name is Elizabeth Perez, and I don't know. Oh, where? So I'm from the Sultana area. So I'm from the Chattanooga Sultana area. I actually came here when I was a student, and as you can see, I really loved it because I am back. I went to Fresno University for my master's in clinical psychology with an emphasis in marriage and family therapy. So I am an MSc right now, working towards my specialization in play therapy. Let's see what classes do I teach. I teach for the TUG, which is traditional undergraduate, and then the BP. So for TUG, I focus on practicum, general psychology. I can't remember. Oh, childhood psychopathology and disabilities. Behavioral psychology for DC, social psychology for DC. Sorry, I'm really spread out with the program. So as you can see, I do have some experience with both, which has been a really great opportunity with being able to teach at night, which I'm sure you guys have noticed with yourself working for classes at night and then going to classes in the morning. There is a difference with that. So what's my area of expertise right now? I'm currently working on my PhD in industrial organizational psychology. So right now, really, it's that specialization with RPT, which is registered play therapy, working towards that, and then also industrial organizational psychology.
I'm Blanca Quiroz, and I work for the DC, and I do teach a class for the traditional undergrad. I teach. I am from Mexico. You could probably tell that. I came here a long time ago. I lived in Massachusetts, California, Texas, so I'm pretty mobile, I think. And then I came here about a year and a half ago. So I started in July of 2018, no, 2021. And I teach clinical psychology. My favorite, that's also one of my expertise. I teach developmental psychology. My degree is in human development and psychology. I also teach assessment, psychological assessment, and pretty much anything that I don't have anybody else to teach. So, I'm the DC for the director for the DC program.
Nice. Okay. Dr. Lay, would you like to give us an overview of the requirements?
So just a show of hands, how many of you are in the degree completion program? Oh, wait, no. I didn't think so. Okay. But so all of you are in a traditional undergraduate program, right? I think I know almost all of you. Okay. So obviously, mouse.
Oh, no, I'm using this.
Oh, you're using. Okay.
You tell me how you move it.
I'll just toss it.
Okay.
So anyways, I want to run through some of the requirements for a degree very briefly, because I know most of you are already aware of this. You guys know, in order to get your bachelor's degree in psychology, you have to complete all of our general education courses, select the focus series, which is that pairing of 2 courses, and then complete all of our psychology courses. The psychology courses that are required, this is all the stuff that's on your EdPan, Sunburn Central, whatever you want to call it. The courses that we just spoke about are the ones that are right here. So our foundational courses are biopsych and administrative systems. Then we have a research sequence. So you should be taking research method first, then stat, then experimental. And in order to take stat, you have to have your GE math completed. So if you're earlier on in the career or a freshman or a sophomore and you haven't done GE math, get that done next semester. Get that on your plan. You can't take statistics until you have that. So these are our research courses, and then we want everyone to have at least one course as a developmental course, at least one clinical course, and then a social culture. And as Blanca was talking about, she teaches the cross-cultural synthesis course. I'm currently teaching the community psychology course. I left that off my list. And then Dr. Pope usually teaches the integration symposium. You only need to choose one of these to fulfill the synthesis top half. And then we're going to encourage you either to do a practicum, which is like an internship, or help one of us with a research project. The other thing to note is that this category right here needs to equal 6 units. So keep that in mind when you're course planning. If you take a 4-unit class here, you only need 2 units of a practicum here. You take the 3-unit integration, you've got to do the 3-unit practicum or research project. So this is a quick overview. I'm guessing most of you have at least started on this. Any questions about this before we move on? So any questions about the psychology requirements? So do you do a practical and a research project? Yes, we can.
In fact, I would suggest you do that. If the better way to go. That's what I'm thinking.
James, move the slide and we will.
Yeah, that's.
Look at that. This is that.
So one of the things, so I would say one thing, if, because of the way psychology is moving, having research experience and some kind of practical experience is really good for graduates. Wherever you want to go, whether it's a master's program or a PhD program. So having a little bit of both is really helpful. So I always think it's great if you can do both, you have time to do both, it's really great. The site research project, we get to work with one of us, both in our research areas. Right now I'm doing an advanced stats course with a few students, which is a lot of fun, at least for some of us. But then I've done several other projects in the past, and I've got articles done through those. And then Liz has worked on several projects as well as Jay. Liz, sorry, sorry. So yeah, I think it's a great idea to do both. And the more classes you can take in your breadth courses, if you have extra room, the better it looks on your transcripts. On your transcripts. Now, one of the tips that Liz has given, I think it's a great job or a great idea, is you have extra units, take something fun to do. Take something that you would normally take, or take something just to kind of learn something new. I think you can add that in as well. A lot of it depends on how many units you came in with, how long you've been at the university, those kinds of questions. Because you have to have the 120 units to graduate. So that's kind of something else to look at as well. But those are some of the tips that I have.
Can I ask a question that students that asked me numerous times about that again? Yes. Am I allowed to take a practicum if they came for that practicum period?
As far as I know, yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that is the correct answer. Can I take more than one practicum?
Yes.
Yes.
It is one of the rare courses that you can take over for additional credit. If you take any other course again, FBU will think that you're just wanting to improve your grade and it will not count as extra units. So practicum is definitely a research project. You can take those more than once, and it's great. That's a good question. Yeah. That's kind of ideal. You could do your practicum and get paid.
Yeah.
And make it into fun. Okay, so how would we go about like, let's say there's a company or a practice that it's not connected to you, but they say, oh, I would want, like, I would love to, for you to hold your internship with us, you know, how do we connect them and like, how would we get that verified with you guys to keep it our practice?
Yeah, so for practicum, is it okay if I? Okay, so for practicum, usually if you are able to find a site, it would be best to connect with them, and then we can set up a meeting where I can discuss with them exactly what your duties would look like. We really want to aim towards you having more towards the clinical experience rather than administrative experience. We don't want you in the filing cabinet where you're kind of doing that for hours. We want you to have some more direct contact as much as you can, whether it's, you know, shadowing, you're in a group setting, anything like that. So if that setting can provide that, we can definitely move forward.
Good way to tell the difference is that if you are at a site where you are meeting a group, that are a social skills training group with people who are at risk, you're allowed to go and make coffee for people to drink during that group, but you're not allowed to like go get your supervisor coffee. Does that make sense? It's not, you're not an administrative assistant. You can do things that contribute to the one-on-one contact you have or one-on-one direct service contact, but you're not an administrative assistant.
It'd be possible to take your practice from like, in another country, because like, I live in Europe, so like, if I ever wanted to go to somewhere in a place there, that would be possible to back to the States.
I would think that it would be possible. It's just, I don't know how it works here in the summer. Like with units with the university, I don't believe it's long.
What's that?
It's not a real.
Yeah. Yeah, technically, the hours you approve have to be done during the semester in which you're enrolled in the course. So we might have to make a special arrangement where you take the summer school course that is taught by one of us if we agree to do that, but in general, we don't count hours that are done for the summer. But internationally, I think we've got students do practice hours in Costa Rica, right? We had that study abroad.
Well, yeah, no, as long as there's a relationship established between the people who would be your supervisor there, and they understand the requirements for a university, that doesn't pose a problem. Administratively, from the university perspective, if I feel like you were to set up a special summer arrangement, and maybe one of us would be willing to teach that practical class, like the university tends to frown upon that because they have to pay us a certain amount of money for that, and the work that we're doing is pretty minimal. You'd be doing the work independently, so there'd have to be like some arrangement where usually it would require a professor to work. Do that oversight.
You want to get in touch with Ken Friesen too?
Yeah, Ken Friesen is the director of global education, and he does, which also includes short-term study abroad programs. And so there are sometimes opportunities to get practicum credit, certainly focus credit, if you engage in some of these short-term study abroad programs. In fact, Ken is kind of like a hidden jewel on this campus for psychology majors, because if you are confused about the focus here and wondering where you might be able to get units, doing things for a short-term study abroad program, you can get a lot of those units taken care of. So Ken's office is over in it's on call.
Any other tips? Share.
Find out from, if you're considering graduate school, find out what prerequisites are part of the application process. So if you're wanting to go, for example, to a marriage and family therapy program, just take a look at the application and take a look at what classes they will want you to have taken at Fresno Pacific. And if you're pretty clear cut on that, what you'd like to do, make sure you try to get as many of those classes checked off the list as possible.
Yeah.
On that note, I checked out the Fresno Pacific NFP program,
And it said that we needed like, I don't know, like 100 hours of practical experience. So in that case, for example, if we, or I don't know if it was 100 hours, but it said it required hours of practical experience for the program. And so that means somebody who did the research project, they would not be able to qualify for the program. Or in that case,
You need 100 hours or start the degree.
yeah, it was to apply. So that's what I was thinking, like, when they say practicum, do they just mean like because I know essentially everybody with like from to graduate, you need some sort of, some people call it practicum, some people call it internship, but everybody has to do some hours, right? So I was wondering if you guys know whether research project and practicum will count for that, or if the MFT is pretty much just, you know, like practicum based. I was wondering if that means you have to do the practicum in your research project hours or not now.
I think that they could actually, but what you want to do is, if you're going to that program, have Adam Galley or one of the other professionals contact me or whoever you want to work with, and we'll kind of see if that would work. Because I feel like I've talked to them before and these things, but
So historically, they wanted 50 hours before you can be admitted to the program. And so if you know that that is your requirement and you're a junior, then I would suggest you take the practicum over the research. The intent there is they want you to have experience in one-on-one sort of therapeutic clinical environments. And you could fulfill that with a research project if you're doing a lot of interviews and things like that with data collection. That could work in that capacity. But plan ahead, think ahead, where are you headed? Where do you feel yourself being pulled? Start looking at those grad programs now and think about what you need to be doing next semester, next year. This is a good time in your life to start thinking ahead. And like you said, definitely talking to MFT faculty, and you guys know what? They're right on the other side of our hallway. So if you're wondering, oh, but Dr. Nate, it's so far. They're right, they're literally right here.
Yeah.
They're teaching classes in here tonight. So they're around.
and they love undergrad science. That's one of the people that they love to their program. You just saw two years ago, right? Walk by. So yeah, if you're interested in doing the research stuff, it was kind of a research project, but get in touch with the professors.
To that point about the program, they're willing to work with you. They really like you, they think that you're very qualified. They're not typically going to let one thing that you haven't, one base that you haven't covered, completely disqualify. Classic example is a few times I've had students enroll in my abnormal psychology class, which is a requirement. It's listed among the course requirements. But they've enrolled as students who've already been admitted into the MFT program, but they still take undergraduate abnormal psychology just to kind of bolster their experience. Or if you've done volunteer things with the church or with a nonprofit organization, they'll take that into consideration as you getting those direct service out. One of the things to pay attention to, the MFT program does require students to have, not necessarily before, but as part of the program, to themselves see a therapist. And there are several programs around the country that do require that. And so if you've ever thought about seeing a therapist, it will never be cheaper than it is right now. Take advantage of it. Reach out, talk to somebody at on-site counseling, or arrange through your insurance maybe to see a counselor, and that could take care of that requirement as well, but not just as a fulfillment, but it's also a good thing.
And onsite is now an official part of FPU, and so your tuition pays for your onsite counseling. So it will cost you nothing to go see an onsite therapist. To go to flyers.
Yeah, but I mean, the rate for, like, once you graduate, now you're gonna be looking at $152 an hour. Yeah.
Okay, Jay, program incentives.
Okay, that's what I'm gonna be for my next time. So just a few things about Fresno Pacific. These are the things I really like. One distinctive that we have at Fresno Pacific is that we're very research heavy. You probably figured that out. This is not only true in terms of your course requirements, in terms of your professors, involving students in their research, but also just professors that encourage students to travel. I think, James, we've got WPA coming up. Your professors love research. And I think that's not necessarily a distinctive in psychology majors, but it is a distinctive at a Christian liberal arts college. I think compared to most Christian colleges that you find kind of in California, like Azusa and Westmont, I think we probably have the most rigorous set of requirements for research-based classes like experimental psychology, research methods, statistics, biopsych. Those are all required here, and that's not true for other majors. Second, I think a distinctive is location. So the longer I live here, the more I think that we're really blessed. The San Joaquin Valley, there are over 100 different languages spoken in homes all across the San Joaquin Valley. We have an enormous need for psychology majors here and for psychology majors to go on and graduate and get their degrees to be agents of change and agents of help here in the community. The job availability rate is really good in the San Joaquin Valley. We're located in a place that relative to the rest of the state is affordable, but the demand for professionals is still really high. And the amount of nonprofit organizations here in the Valley is also really high. In fact, they haven't updated it since 2018, but I did buy newer copies for each of you, the faculty. I think Blanca, you had already found yours in your box, but here's one for you. You get a granule. You get a granule. I have one, and then the last copy will be in the lab. This is a guidebook published by Fresno Metro Ministry or Ministries. It is a list of all the major service providers here in the San Joaquin Valley. You basically look up a problem, and these are the nonprofit agencies that do work in this area. I mean, this is like if you ever wanted to be a really powerful referral source for people who are suffering in some way, this is a really good book. This is also a very good way to find the practical. So anyway, I digress. Third, FPU psychology program is very immersive. For a Christian liberal arts college, a large percentage of our classes have laboratory experiences as part of the curriculum, and I hope you feel that. I think a lot of students, when they leave here, say that was an important part of their preparation. Additionally, several of our courses have travel components built into them, such as in cross-cultural psychology. Cheryl Dewitt is going to Guatemala yet again in 2024, and that's an opportunity for students to join her on that trip. Integration Symposium travels every year, except for COVID years, to Pasadena. History and Systems, I've taken students to Europe, I think 6 times now. There are opportunities built in for students to be able to travel and do study abroad. Fourth, it's Christian. I think psychology majors at Fresno Pacific are taught how to be true to their faith while also being responsible doers of psychology. Each of our faculty has a strong, vibrant faith and gives them a unique language. They walk with integrity in the world of faith and church and community, while also holding themselves to the highest standards of science and clinical practice. The way I like to think of it is, we may not always be 100% fluent in all issues affecting psychology and faith, but we are at a minimum very conversant in those. And so if your faith is important to you and if psychology and science are important to you, then if you have faculty here who know how to speak that language. We're a university. By that, we're not just an undergraduate program. At FPU, we have 2 really outstanding graduate programs that students, we recommend them because they're really good, both in school psychology, PTS, and in marriage and family therapy. And so for those of you who are not wanting to venture too far out, Fresno Pacific has a really good built-in structure that a lot of students are able to come to Fresno Pacific as undergrads, but then also continue their education here at FPU and in a few years be practicing. And then finally, I would say we know who we are not. Fresno Pacific is not a Research One institution, which means that we are not going to get, your faculty are not going to get bogged down by living in a publish or perish environment. Your classes are going to be taught by the PhD holders in those subject areas, not by teaching assistants. And we really emphasize the classroom experience. And so students that leave our program and then kind of come back later tell us that that was just really vital for them. But not only that, don't just take advantage of the fact that we have advising as part of what we do, but really mentoring. we wouldn't be here if we didn't love it when students came by our offices. And that's a real distinctive of our program. So anyway, that's about 5 or 6 minutes on, I think, what makes Fresno Pacific Psychology unique.
Great, thanks, Jake. A few different announcements of things that you may be interested in. Nice. They're nice. So if you're interested in getting to graduate school, we have a graduate school seminar taking place November 3rd at 12:40 p.m. Myself will be there, hoping Mr. Sarks will be there, and not yet. It's actually put on by the Alpha Chi Honor Society, and but psychology kind of plays a big role in them. And so it's a great way to get just kind of some general tips on how to get into grad school. So November 3rd at 12:40 p.m. November 3rd, 12:40 p.m.
Typically in the BC one.
Yeah, she's playing the BC Lounge. And we'll send out a few more. Psychology Research Night, which will be the night that our psych students presented their research as posters, will be November 29th at 6 p.m. And that'll be in the Thiessen Education Conference Center.
Thiessen.
That's what these pictures are, past events.
Yes.
Past the right, and then especially-
These are all purple violations.
I will be taking students to the Western Psychology Association convention. And if you're interested in, so I'm going to be hopefully taking a lot of my students from experimental from the fall. If anybody did a poster in spring, and you'd be interested in making a poster down to that conference, Harry C. here. Then please get in touch with me. And it doesn't, you don't have to do the same poster you did. You can revamp data, revamp everything, and get it into kind of a better place if you want to. But get in contact with me if you want to be involved in that convention. And then the Western Psychology Conference for Undergraduate Research, which is
That one.
that's typically the end of April. We're kind of waiting to hear back about that one. But students in the spring who are taking experimental psychology then will be able to bring their posters there as well and populate them. Any other announcements that I missed?
Well, just quickly, the some students have, I've already started to get some letters of recommendation requests ahead of the graduate school seminar. So just because we have that kind of graduate school seminar coming up in conjunction with Alpha Chi, does not mean that questions about graduate school are not welcome. Like even when we're kind of out there hobnobbing, if you have any specific questions, please don't hesitate to ask, because I know some of you, the ball is already covered people, especially regarding maybe campus visits and things like that. So don't feel like you have to wait. I think maybe even some of you came here tonight wanting to talk more about grad school than just like general psychology announcements. So please don't hesitate to ask.
And you really should try to, if you have a chance to go to the conference and give a poster, it's great on the resume, great on getting into grad schools, and it's really easy. Most of the time, they love to have students present their work, so you will most likely get in. So it's a great activity. Okay, Ms. Sarks.
Okay, so I'm briefly gonna go over psychology career path. So as you've heard, just across the board, different areas, and I'm sure just in different classes, you've heard of it as well. So marriage and family therapy, I'll start there. As you guys have heard, MFT program, MFT seminary is here where it would be, very easy if you did that program where you're already on campus and aware of it. If any of you are interested in hearing more about that program and have specific questions towards that program, they will be attending my practicum course on October 26th. If any of you are up to waking up at 8 a.m., well, being there at 8 a.m., not waking up, but being there at 8 a.m., they will be there to answer any questions and actually present about what the application process looks like. So please let me know if you're interested in that, and I will send just a reminder to you. So for counseling, LPCC, that would be the licensed professional clinical counseling. There's a program there at Fresno State. There are a lot of different programs where it's a master's level course, where it does focus more on the clinical setting, of course. So keeping that in mind, social work, MSW, or you can go the licensed clinical social work route as well. So it's really open where you are able to do clinical work as well, working more with foundational structural stuff just across the valley. So you'll see a lot of that in school-based setting as well. So if you do look at LPCC, LCSW, and MST, LMSC, they all work in school settings. So if you are interested in a school-based setting, please feel free to pick my brain about that, what that looks like, especially on a treatment team with individuals. Addiction and rehabilitation programs, if you're interested in something like a substitute counselor, that would definitely be a great route to go. Clinical psychology, PhD, and the PsyD. Those are also really great programs if you're looking at more of the research part of it, actually combining it with that. So keep that in mind if you want to go more research and teaching as well. So going down there to the occupational therapy, physical therapy, it does set you up to look at those programs going into master's and doctorate. Also in psychiatry, if you're interested more in medication, how the medication interacts with the body, what it's going to do with one another. So looking at that whole route of psychopharmacology is really interesting. So right there on the right side, teaching credential education specialist, school counseling, school psychology, another great program that we have here at SCU. The BCBA, Board Certified Behavior Analyst. So if any of you are currently working in ABA, that's behavior technician, RBT, that's another great route to move in and specialize in BCBA. So going down there for business, marketing, industrial organizational psychology, all of those are really great, where I'm sure a lot of you have maybe even seen the algorithms that are being created, people walking into work environments, consulting work, a lot of that will be in that aspect where they're really looking and diving deep into the different teams across different workplace settings. And then law school as well, so it could set you up for all these different areas. And I know that the psychology field is very, very vast. And it could feel like you're closed in and what's next and what am I going to do for the rest of my life? But just taking a step back for each one of you and just asking what's going to be next for me. And that's going to be where the graduate school questions really do come up. So keep that in mind as we're moving forward. And like they've all said, please feel free to reach out to us at any time when that is coming up. There have been a lot of great thoughts, questions that have come across, but please feel free to reach out.
One little thing I want to add on to that on the lower left there, where Liz mentioned medical school for higher, a huge area of growth. They're not much, they're flat out. And there are very few people who are able to prescribe. I mean, medical doctors can prescribe psychotropic medications, but people really want to see psychiatrists. So a very sneaky, underrated growth field are psychiatric nurse practitioners who can prescribe medication. That's a big career that a lot of like psychology, want to work with the patient and have a patient load, but also want to have a really good salary and be working as a practitioner. People often, that's a very rated one, psychiatric nurse practitioner, or to be a physician assistant in a psychiatric doctor. So those are both places for psychology majors with some extra training at the undergraduate level, get into nursing school or get into PA school, that you will be doing kind of the work of a medical doctor and a psychiatrist. Just you will be a psychiatrist, you'll be doing that kind of work just because the demand is so great.
And honestly, guys, all of my clients are 6 months and up on the waiting list of waiting just to see a psychiatrist for medication. So that's really how much that field really needs help right now. So it's been really growing.
And in particular, child psychiatrists. They're just, and because medical school students don't choose psychiatry because the residency takes so long. And so it's there are not many child psychiatrists, but the need is extraordinary.
Great, so yeah, so wanted to finish up with, you guys have any questions? That's the program, that's in general, grad school. Whatever. Yes.
I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with this, but I had seen on the list that one of the occupations could be like school counseling and school psychology. And what would be sort of like the main difference in like
No,
Oh, I was just gonna say, for the school counselor, you're gonna focus on more of the, in a sense, kind of the deeper work, the therapeutic realm, and the school psychologist is gonna focus on more of the assessment, so that's gonna be coming up a lot with the educational assessment, so that's how it kind of gets split up on the treatment itself, if that makes a little bit more sense of how that would be, where they're not having therapeutic work for the 40 to 50, so 40, 50 minutes, so that's typically how it is split up. They focus more on IEPs, all of that different track.
So if you like giving tests, writing reports, and attending meetings all day, then become a school psychologist.
There's something wrong with that profession.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. No, there's some people really like that. Okay, love writing
You
reports.
sound negative. I don't know if I appreciate it.
All right.
School counseling will also be talking like, the guidance counseling, so it's like, what classes are you gonna take, where do you like to go to college, where do you take the SAT? That's part of it. School psychology will be, here we work towards the therapy, particular issues that come up. And educational assessment, basically learning disability. So that's what you're probably not the students that maybe they're at risk for learning disability. You're on that team of people who've heard of an IEP and individualized education.
I was just wondering would you recommend students right after they get their bachelor's to go and get the graduate school? Do you plan on doing that, or is it okay to take a gap year to then pay off and?
Well, I mean, I would just think it's perfectly fine to do it when you can. And just to get out of debt, it's probably a good idea.
Well, one advantage of going to school that you defer for debt too. So the question is not, like how much the debt is, but the fact that I don't have a full paying job to pay for it right now. As long as you're in school, we can, some of those loans can be, not all of them, yeah, some that are unsubsidized loans that are, they send someone a bill collector to your door, intimidate you, no. It's, no, they can be deferred. So that's one big advantage. No, I took 2 years. If depending on the, I can do.
Yeah, I think so.
I did not, I started my PhD program when I was 22. And I was very young compared to everybody, and I do wish that I had paid a little bit. I didn't have any loans to pay off, but I just wish I had a little later.
Yeah.
One thing that happened too, the people that did wait a couple of years and then enrolled, the burnout rate, at least in my cohort, was way lower. Whereas the students that went directly into the graduate program after just having graduated from undergrad, they were, this is a 4, 5, or 6 year program, but by the end of the 3 years, they were gapped. So some people ended up taking that gap year anyway. And then coming.
Yeah, I have a question. Why did you want to have a gap year?
Why did I regret it?
Yeah,
I think grad school is a different beast. You get into classes that are maybe 10 people in a room, and you're assigned to reading, and you have to be able to all of a sudden digest information in a way that you're not expected to as an undergrad. And you're asked to participate and have a worldview and kind of have an idea of how you see psychology. And that was a struggle for me as a 22-year-old. I was really good at taking tests. My son's essay, give it to me. I can write a research paper. Do I have my own thoughts about child development? Ooh, wait a second, hold on, I have to have opinions, I have to have thoughts. And I felt underprepared. Even though academically I can do it, just the workload is a lot. It's a lot.
Different kind of work things are due at a different time. It's much more independent.
Yeah.
A lot of reading.
There's a sense too that, I mean, I hate colleges to move into this, but there's a sense that you have to go to college. So there's this thing where you go because you have to go. But with grad school, I don't think it's possible to do what grad school requires of you unless you really want to. And so I think part of the taking time off was in some ways, at least for me, to figure out, is this something that I really want to do? At the end of this, am I going to be happy that I have this kind of a degree? Or am I just doing this because it's probably the right thing to do? It's important, I think, to do research on what you're getting yourself into, what the program requirements are. College, you can kind of just go a little bit. You can kind of go and get some help. But grad school is, you can't do it. You really need to know what you're getting into, and helpful to really like it. And so sometimes people just need extra time to figure out if this is really what they want. What they know, deliver pizza, volunteer at a church, wash cars.
I was in insurance sales, and I was on email staff. I mean, the insurance part sucked though. I mean, for me, I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I graduated with my second degree, my undergrad psych, and I just. So I got married, got a regular Joe job, I was at a restaurant, so I was kind of wandering. Like, I think I wish I would have gone to grad school earlier, actually. But I think it just depends on your own kind of temperament. Like, you know, I'm a nerd, like I like what I like to do. There's a problem. Other people like a little more time. I think, and you know, go explore the world of Europe.
But I like you, does that make me a nerd too?
Yes, it does make you. For sure, you're a nerd. Close. Yeah.
What are some career opportunities during grad school, during that time, how you think that would
Why just, there isn't much to do with that. I think you do need to go on some kind of master's. However, on your way to that, I think there's a lot of great kind of counseling centers, with children, those kind of things that you kind of help on the in between. And then you can choose it. I mean, I think whatever gives you a certain amount of joy or a certain amount of satisfaction during the day, things you do that you really like, that get you excited, any way you can maximize that time, probably something. If there's stuff that's really draining, that
But just to clarify, you need a master's to do, at a minimum, usually something that's psychological in nature.
right.
To clarify.
Yes.
In terms of what kind of career could I go into if I just had a bachelor's degree? Any number of careers. I mean, human resources, not just limited to the things that you get here. I mean, if the goal is to make money, you know, you really want to make private equity, you want to go into private equity or banking. That's pretty much where it's at. And those are pretty competitive jobs, but those, they don't require you to be a business major, they just require you to be really competent, not be dead during the interview process. But the highest paying jobs for graduates with degrees that are not specific to a particular field for private equity.
Liz, do you have any thoughts on that? Or?
If you're interested in more of the clinical realm and you're looking for something after your bachelor's before going into graduate work and even trying to figure out, do I want to work with clients directly? Something that you can look into is something like rehabilitation aid, case management, intervention specialist, behavior technician, anything like that where you're going to get direct experience with your system, not in the psychological aspect as much as you would in more of a clinical psychology aspect. But keeping that in mind, that could give you a better understanding. Is this something that I want for myself? Can I see myself doing this 40 hours a week, 20 hours a week, whatever it may be? So that can give you a better understanding. Those are positions that you can have in fashion.
Yes, I mean, since Liz is the more recent graduate, she has a lot of great experience. She did a great job, kind of having a job and then getting her master's. And kind of, I think she did it the right way. So I would definitely check in with her.
And I took maybe, I think it was a year between my master's and going into my doctorate, a year off, but I worked as a suicide prevention outreach coordinator for the Valley. So that was something where I was continuing to gain experience, and it was because of here where I even had the experience of going to a conference. I went to the American Association of Suicidology conference for that position, so it was just an amazing experience overall. And that was a position I actually even had the opportunity of having just because I started as a practical student here as a volunteer. So eventually moved into per diem, then part-time, then I was full-time with them, and then moved into the outreach coordinator position for the Valley, being able to provide training, those different types of things, and then also being able to understand what crisis looks like with different populations. So as a clinician now, when crisis, I can respond to crisis in the school-based setting, so being able to respond to that, it kind of doesn't, well, in a sense, it doesn't scare me, and as a new clinician, it can be scary. So keeping that in mind, that was something that I did for years, and being able to find a position that's gonna help you understand where is it that I wanna be, what population do I wanna work with, this is the perfect opportunity to do that, and that's what you can do in your gap year, if you're still trying to figure out what program you wanna go into, what population, do I wanna focus more on research, do I wanna work in a clinical setting, this is the perfect opportunity to do that.
It also work, with a bachelor degree, you could actually get an emergency credential to teach, if you're interested in teaching. They're short in teachers right now,
Very.
so very, very short. So with a bachelor degree in psychology, you probably get a job as a teacher. And then get your credential. Or I also work in a hospital in a research project, that a big hospital, that big research project. They often hire research people. I work at UCLA, that research assistant, few years. So if you were not going to research, that would be one way to explore whether that is a career you want. Same thing, if you want to go into a school setting, being a teacher will be the best thing. You know, either you love it or you
After school program.
I think just a comment, that kind of goes back to the research project, because the Fresno relationship, patient recommendations, maybe given ask for.
you could even publish.
There's been a big shift that's taken place, and I'll speak for myself here, I know my colleagues agree with this or not, but we were coming up with graduates, big emphasis, my generation was try to find a career. So all the people that would advise you on career, but all this emphasis on discernment, thinking about it, like making the correct choice. Your generation's a little bit different, and career counselors today are much more likely to say less about, okay, you absolutely have to choose the perfect career, because unless you do, you'll have made this terrible mistake. But most career advice right now is more like, what's next? Right? And so if you get too locked into thinking, it's got to be this one thing, your generation in particular loves to kind of move from place to place and to find the right groove for yourself. And in retrospect, I wish someone could have told me that, because my life and my career has actually resembled that more than it has choose this really good career. So like, I was actually going to put you on the spot a little bit, Blanca, just to talk a little bit about how, to what extent what you're doing now is something that you could have foreseen 10 or 15 years ago.
Not at all.
But I mean, you were already had a degree 10 or 15 years ago. So it's like even after you've gone to graduate school and gotten a job, there's still this sense in which you really have no idea what this is. And you have no idea what you're going to get into next. And I want to normalize that. That's a very important thing to not emphasize too much. Like, focus not so much on the last thing, like the career you end up doing, but more like, what's next for me and how can I do 100% of what's next?
Well, the job market is just so unstable. Too strong a word. Yeah, it's unstable. Like, you could switch careers a lot. So it is kind of like, okay, what am I going to do now? What can I do to get ready for what's next? I don't have to worry too much about far in the future.
And the numbers reflect that. Like, people that are losing their jobs right now, the rate of people losing their jobs, getting laid off, is actually higher than it's been in a few years. But guess what else is even higher than that? People finding a job within 1 month to replace that job. So there's a lot of transition. And just don't be afraid of ending up somewhere else than you thought you might.
It's not that bad. I thought I was being trained like in the best universities to become a researcher. And I was for And I was for about 5 years, and I hated it. I hated it, honestly, because it's such a competitive environment, and you're always at the pushing and stealing ideas from everywhere you can. So I actually I found I love working with people that in the district program. I love working with people who were going through the same experience as I went, like an adult learner and all that. Who would have known, you know? And I love it.
I will say, like, I am a little confused with the different degrees and how that will play, like, how that matters if ultimately you just want to get inside clinical psychology. Because, at least for me, that's what I would want to do. And if I can't get in a doctoral program right away, obviously I would do master's. But then when I look at master's programs, like Fresno State's married to family is married to family counseling, and it's a bachelor's in science. How would would it matter if I get a BA, an MA here at FPU, for marriage and family therapy, and I could still do the same thing? Then if I go to Fresno State and get a BS in marriage and family counseling, and I would still do the same thing, like, you know, that's kind of confusing me as. And I also met other people who are MFTs, and they didn't even take an MFT program. You could have a clinical psychology program in your master's or something. So I'm kind of like confused that as to like, do the different types of master's degrees even matter then?
Yeah, no, great question. It depends. If your goal is just to be a therapist, and that's what you want to do, and just be a counselor, you actually don't need a huge advancement. You don't need a PhD to be able to do that. You can actually be a social worker and have a social work degree. If you're licensed, right? Licensed clinical social worker, and you can see patients. So any of those careers that were mentioned up here on the left-hand side, those are all things that you can go into and you can see clients. You can even be a school psychologist and see some clients privately. But if you want to like call yourself a clinical psychologist, then you need some sort of doctoral level degree. And in all cases, you need to be licensed. There's some sort of licensing exam that you need to take. So the way to think about it is, who do I want to work with? What if I'm sitting across from someone? Who are they? What problem do they have, and how am I equipped to solve that problem? And so that's usually a good like kind of a question to ask yourself that will drive you toward the clinical degree you're at. But you're right. Some people will get into a very, very extensive, exhaustive program, only to find that they didn't need that huge of a program to be able to do what they want.
So, I mean, if you want to be a therapist, you can get licensed as a marriage and family therapist. You do the master's here at FPU, and you get into private practice. And once you're private practice, it matters your skill level more so than whatever's kind of behind your name. If you want to do more like psychological testing, if you want to be a psychologist, you probably don't want to get a master's first and then get into a PhD program. You want to do a PhD program from the start, and you get your master's on the way. You can't get your master's and kind of, you know, prolonging the PhD too. But most PhD programs, the master's is kind of folded into it, so you don't usually need much.
But Dr. Who also me too that it's like even back then in master's program only next to the program. So you go out and stuff.
Yeah. And psych stuff, you don't usually do the master's and PhD are together.
I do have a question, because career-wise, I want to have my private practice. That's what I want. You have to have like your doctorate for that, right? No, you can have a master's and own your own practice.
Get be licensed as a marriage family therapist or a
Yeah, the licensed clinical social worker can do it. I think LPC can do it.
Yeah. They can't be some more cloud communication, I think. I know, see, most people I know who have a good private practice have PhD, but I do know some who have just a master's.
I was thinking I've never met
like, in every private practice that I know of, it's a PhD of.
Yeah, I-
So that's why I was wondering, I didn't know that was possible.
You definitely don't have to have a profession. I don't know if it helps you to have it or not. Be a good question.
The main thing is that that's what you would be doing, so the advantage of a PhD oftentimes is not if you're a therapist, that you're also qualified to teach in the first person.
Or just that testing.
Or psychological, although that's trickle down in the PhD.
All right, anything else to kind of finish this up? Great, well, I smell tacos outside, so please go ahead and go outside. Thank you.
And I might be able to let's get a little
So I think I'm going to go and then later in life.